It's the Trappings and Trinkets Knitting Podcast, and I'm your host, Nicole. I am coming to you live from my dining room today. I don't know why. I've tried a couple different spots in my house. Some are way too bright, some are way too dark, so here I am in the dining room. Also, because I have a little story to tell you about this guy right here. This weekend, by the way, we're kind of low on knitting today. We don't have a lot of knitting to show, so I just have some stories for you. There's a little knitting, but it's mostly stories. So the first story is that I woke up on Sunday morning, and my husband announced that he didn't really have too much to do that day, so he wanted to know if there was anything that I needed him to do, or that I wanted him to help me with. So I said, yeah, actually there is. There's always a list, right? But one of the things that I needed right away was that I had been waiting on him because I knew I needed to try to take my sewing machine apart and clean it. My sewing machine is 18 years old. Here, I'll move the camera down so you can see it a little better. So it's 18 years old. I bought it when I bought it before he was born. So it's 18 or 19 years old. And it's a Kenmore. I think I bought it from Sears, and I love it. And the reason I love it is because it's super simple. Over here, it has numbers, first put your thread here, then here, then go down, then go back up. There's 5 steps to threading it. It's very easy. The bobbin box is super simple to get into. Just everything about it is so easy. The little knobs over here, one of them changes the type of stitch one of them changes the width of the stitch, and one changes the length. And then there's also, it's this thing that changes the type of stitch you're doing. So anyway, the knobs are all just right there. It's so easy. And also, when do I ever do anything besides straight stitch? And maybe if I'm really going to be crazy, I might do a little zigzag, but that's it. So I'm a pretty simple sewing machine user. So when it stopped working, I was working on a batch of the bags that I make. I was on the last 2 bags. I think I told the story on the last podcast. Last 2 bags. I had one seam on the interior lining of both of those, and my sewing machine just went crazy. It was bird nesting all underneath, where the bobbin thread was coming in, and I hadn't moved any sort of tension levers, so I was like, I don't know what to do. So anyway, when I brought it into the store, the woman there, who actually was one of my friends, I didn't realize she worked at a sewing store, so she told me, we could clean it for you for, I think it was going to be $85. Or you could take it home and try to clean it out yourself. But when the tension goes crazy like that, often there's plates, I guess, metal plates that are supposed to touch, and that is what creates the tension. And sometimes some fuzz will get in between those plates and won't allow them to touch all the way, and that's what would make the tension less tense. So she said, if you clean all that fuzz out of there, the problem might just fix itself. So I was waiting for Jason because I thought, well, I could probably try to take this thing apart by myself, but if there's 2 people doing it, maybe we have a better chance of getting everything back where it's supposed to go, because I was expecting it to be super complicated. So I sit down with the machine is facing him, and I'm like, okay, I know the stuff is up here somewhere. So I'm looking around for a screw. And as I look to the back of my machine, I'm like, what's this hinge right here? Yeah, there you go. There's the whole inner workings of the sewing machine. So for 18 years, I've had this thing. Didn't know there was a hinge that you could easily open up your sewing machine, and we just got some canned air and squirted it out. We also found out, here, I'll move the camera again so you can see this down here, this comes off. How's that? That comes off, and actually you can unscrew this little thing right here, and that allows you to clean out the bobbin box as well. So we did that. It was super gross. I had 30 broken needle tips in there, which I would totally expect because in 18 years, I've definitely broken plenty of needles. In fact, I would say of every 2 batches of bags I make, I'd probably break a needle tip somewhere in there because if you hit the little metal, I don't know what they're called, that like on zippers, most of it is plastic and nylon, but like at each end of the actual zipper teeth, there are little metal things. And if you hit right on one of those metal things, it's going to break your needle. So it's part of what happens. So anyway, that's my sewing machine tip. If you are a novice sewer like me, you might not realize that it might be super easy to get into your machine and clean it out so that it runs better and probably will last longer. So after the sewing machine thing, I mean, it really took like 10 minutes. So he's like, okay, I still don't have anything to do. What should we do now? So I said, well, let's go clean our bedroom, because our bedroom, it's kind of turned into the catch-all. Like I have a lot of things. When you have a craft business, you have a lot of things that you need to make things with, and we do have like half of our underneath our house is basement, but it's not finished, and it does, even though we run a like a dehumidifier down there, it does smell like basement. Like it's kind of, musty basement. And like the cat litter boxes are down there. It's not a great place to store things long term if you don't want them to smell like basement. So I don't want to store anything down there that's like eventually going to be shipped to someone else. So I'd like to keep all of those things on the main floor of our house. Sorry, yay, my dad's texting me with happy medical test results. So yay. Okay, so anyway, where was I? Basement. Yes. Okay, so everything that eventually is going to go somewhere else to live needs to be stored on the main floor of our house so it doesn't smell like musty basement. So our bedroom has kind of turned into the place where I store those things, because I do have a lot of space kind of in a corner. So it kind of is just in that corner, but still, like it had become a situation. So we went in there. I cleaned out and organized all that work kind of stuff. I was able to incorporate that into a big dresser that we have, because I used to have a bunch of stuff from a little like kinder music type class that I taught a few times when my kids were really little. So this was like 15 years ago. I still had a bunch of hand puppets and a bunch of little like kid percussion instruments. And I was like, like there is always a possibility, like who knows? I would never say never. So who knows? Maybe I'll teach kinder music one day again. Maybe I'll start teaching music at an elementary school. Anything could happen. It's not going to happen anytime soon. And like maybe that was $100 worth of stuff. It's not a huge amount that like if I had to buy it again, I could buy it again. So I decided to find a person that could actually use that stuff right now. So I happen to know someone who works at a daycare. I think she works in a room with 4-year-olds. And so I said, hey, do you have any use for these hand puppets and these instruments? And she was like, yeah, I would totally use that at school. And actually she has a bunch of little kids of her own. So either way, I don't care where she uses it. I'm just happy that it's getting used. And now I have an entire drawer that I can start putting work type stuff in. So it was win-win for everybody. So I'm happy about that. Got that cleaned out. Got the, I went through my clothes, got the Goodwill stuff boxed up. Husband he claimed that he had already done that like just a couple months ago. So he didn't do that again. But we did organize our dresser drawers. I was still engaged in some other cleaning when he kind of ran out of his stuff to clean and organize. So he's like, well, what do you want me to do for you? And I said, well, if you want, you could try to organize my underwear drawer. And he was like, I don't know if I have the skills for this. And I'm like, listen, all I want you to do, put the underwear in a pile, put the socks in a pile, put the bras in a pile. Like, this is not rocket science. So he did that, and Mom cleaned out my ratties. I cleaned out the underwear that should not be in there. I'm not sure it was just my mom, or maybe my mom and sister were at my house one time when I was folding laundry, and they were both like, what is that underwear? Because like I am not that fancy that I would throw away underwear that is slightly frayed, or maybe more than slightly frayed. Because let's face it, if you are a woman of a certain age, like sometimes you want to wear the ratty underwear because you don't want to ruin the good underwear. Am I right? Like when you're going to sleep, on day 1 or 2, Yeah, you need the ratties because you know whatever underwear you're wearing, it's not going to go well. Although that's all different now because, and I talked about this in a very early podcast. I want to say it was like number 6 or 7. Have you ever heard of Thinks? Thinks are underwear for women of a certain age that either don't want to use tampons or pads or want to use those things, but also just have underwear that, if whatever you're using leaks, who cares? You just rinse it out and wash it and it's perfect. So now I'm on the Thinks bandwagon. So I do not have to save my ratties because I have the Thinks. So anyway, so he was good at cleaning that stuff out. this is the TMI podcast, and I'm your host, Nicole. He also, it was entertaining to see him go through, like I had a couple of pairs of nylon, like pantyhose nylons, and he held them up and he's like, do these fit like a human person? Because, when you have the pantyhose, like the crotch is like this big and then like the legs are like this big and they really stretch. But like if you're a man that has never really seen them out of the package and not on a person, like you might not know. They're tiny. When you take them out of the package, it looks like you're going to put them on a 4-year-old. So he got those all in one spot. He did a very good job on the underwear drawer. So now my underwear drawer is so organized. So yay. So the room has been so clean that I've even made the bed 2 days in a row. And I am not a bed maker. Are you a bed maker? So my philosophy is I'm going to get back in that bed tonight and sleep in it again. So why am I making it fancy? And also I don't really spend like 1% of my awake day is spent in my bedroom. Like the only time I really go in the bedroom while I'm awake is because my husband comes home from work and changes his clothes, and sometimes I'll follow him into the bedroom and we'll talk while he's changing his clothes. So like that is the only time that I go in the bedroom. So I'm not a bed maker, but it just looks so nice and pretty in there that I was like, I want to make it even prettier. So even though I don't make the bed, I will admit, so I am not a fan of a disorganized bed. I do not want to sleep in a disorganized bed. My son sleeps in what really can only be referred to as a hamster's nest. It's like all the blankets are like it's like he's been fighting with the blankets and then he just like lays in amongst the blankets and they're like around him and kind of on him and twisted around him. But like I want a flat sheet. I want it pulled tight from the bottom. I want it tucked into the bottom. So even though I don't make the bed, I do straighten the bed before I get in it at night. And actually my husband, because he understands you have to put some effort into a relationship and do nice things for each other. So one of the nice things he has been doing pretty consistently for a while is that when he goes to bed, which is usually a few minutes or maybe a long time before me, depending on whether it's a weeknight or a weekend, before he gets into bed, he'll straighten out the bed sheets so that when I come to bed, it's all nice. So anyway, he's very sweet that way. All right. So sewing. Speaking of sewing machines, that now I've cleaned it. Here, let's come back up, shall we? So you don't have to look at my stomach. Now that I've cleaned out my sewing machine and I can use it again, I'm very excited. So you've seen this fabric before. It's just gray with some polka dots. And on one side, it's super, super soft. And on the other side, it's like a rougher, I mean, it's not real rough, but it's a slightly rougher knit fabric. And I just want to make like a loose sweatshirt, like a pullover sweatshirt that, maybe in the morning before I'm really showered and dressed, I'll throw that on. Or maybe if I want to go for a walk and it's cold out, throw that on. So I bought a Simplicity pattern, and it's this one that I'm planning on making with this lovely polka dotted gray fabric. And I don't think I'm going to do contrast for the neckline and the cuffs. We'll see. I couldn't find any similar knit fabric at my local Joann's to pair with it. So I was like, I'll just use the same. Maybe what I could do is, I haven't decided yet if the fuzzy is going to face out or face in. So maybe I could turn it for the neckline and the cuffs, like whichever way I do the facing out, I could make the opposite side face out. So I could do like that. But I don't know. We'll see. So I'm excited to get started on that pretty soon. And then the other thing I bought was a legging pattern because I want to buy some spoonflower fabric, like some really fun knit fabric on spoonflower, and make just like some plain, oops, not that one, this one, just some plain leggings. I mean, I'm not hip enough to pull this off, obviously. And like, are these leather? Like, I'm not gonna make leather leggings. I don't know what's going on here. This is like Thunderdome pants there with like leather bands. I'm also not cool enough to pull those off. So I'm just gonna go with plain, although these plain ones also look like they're leather. I don't know. I'm not buying leather fabric to make my leggings. My daughter would not allow that, I'm sure. All right, so that is sewing projects of the future. Shall we talk knitting? Let's talk knitting. So I have a couple finished things and so one of them you won't be able to, I can't show you because I already brought it to the person that asked me to knit it for him, but I'll flash a picture here. So these socks were made out of Knitted Wit Victory Fingering, and it was the salted caramel colorway. And let me say, I love the fabric. Like, I will totally make some socks for myself out of this yarn. It's really, really nice. So I was really proud of myself because I loved the way the heel looked. There were no holes at all. I was just using German short rows, and I did just a short row heel. I think I left 6 or 8 stitches in the middle of the heel unwrapped, and then I just alternated. I wrapped 1 stitch past the wrap on each side as I went back and forth. The numbers were all in my project page, so if you're really interested, you could look there. But here's the thing. Like 2 weeks later, I'm looking at these pictures, and I'm like, I only did half a heel. Like, that's not a complete heel. So the thing is, like, I put them on my feet, because I always do that just to make sure they're like relatively foot shaped. And they were fine. I put them on my sock blockers. They were fine. So I don't know. Like, it's my fault if they're not right. I will reknit them. But I also don't want to reknit them unnecessarily. So I think I'm going to see if he has picked them up yet, and just ask him like, hey, how are those socks fitting? If the heels are a little tight, I can make them roomier for you. But I think I'll probably let him try them out before I offer to change them, because like, I hate to reknit all that sock for no reason. So that was a big bummer. That was a bummer. So in the meantime, I've been making some socks for myself. This is Leading Men Fiber Arts Dramaturg. It's their DK yarn. And I'm using the same idea, German short rows, for the heels. There's slightly more space in that line. Like, I wouldn't call them holes, but there's some space there. Like that right there, I could tighten that up on the inside. There's the line. It's, an obvious line. So I guess what happens is that it's because you're making a wrap, and then when you do the other half of the heel, you're doing another wrap right on top of that wrap. So I think that's what creates the space there. So I'm not sure if there's really anything that you can do to completely eliminate it, except for doing half a heel. I guess we found out that you can do that. Whoops, I should move this way and move the sock. Ah, there we go. I'm telling you, like, this backwards thing is really messing with my mind. I hope that the photo booth engineers get that fixed sometime soon, because I much prefer recording on that app. But these made some nice thicker socks. These will be good for winter, not for spring or summer. These are nice thick socks. So foliage is the colorway, and it's kind of a variegated, but it's a small enough circumference that it almost acts like a self-striping. So that's been fun. I enjoy knitting socks with self-striping yarns, because you kind of feel like, oh, like, okay, this stripe is orange, but what's coming next? Oh, it's blue. Oh, it's brown. It's white. So it kind of keeps you going. So I like that. So I've got that one done, and I've got the other one done, like the foot and the heel are both done. So I am well on my way. And DK weight socks don't really take that long anyway. I showed you my first Wishmaker mitt the last time, and I just have a little bit knit on the cuff of the second one. So I'm working on those. That's my second project, but it hasn't gotten much love this week because I was looking for a new sweater project to start. So I've had this one in my queue for a long time. It's called the Branches and Buds Pullover, and I'll flash a picture here so that you can see what it's going to look like. I already have the yarn for the body of the sweater. I'm going to use this Malabrigo Arroyo, and this is the Sandbank colorway. So it'll be kind of a light, I mean, it is a tonal. There are different shades in here, but it's gonna, it's gonna be beige-ish. And then I bought today I bought two real light colors. I bought a natural and a pearl skein of the same yarn because I'm not sure, like I liked the pearl color better, but because I think the natural tends a little bit towards yellow, and I thought the pearl might go better with what this is, but it's hard to tell online. And I love Malabrigo yarns, but they are not the most consistent in color. Like sometimes you see, especially if you're ordering online, sometimes you see a picture and then the yarn that you actually receive is in the vein of that color you saw on the computer, but definitely it's not the same thing. So they are kind of loose with their colorways. So that was the other thing, is if one of the tones is slightly off, then maybe that would make a difference. So this yarn is like $18 a skein. So it's not, and I'm going to use a single skein of sport yarn. That's a pair of gloves or a hat, or there's plenty of things I can do with that. So I don't mind having an extra skein. And then I ordered a crazy variegated skein, and I actually can't remember I'm not sure which colorway I picked, because I was looking at maybe 4 different ones, and I kept looking at them, and then I went on Ravelry and I looked at some projects that were made from each of those to like kind of see the wide variation in color for each of those colorways. And so I did decide on one of them, but the reason is because, so this Branches and Buds pullover, initially I thought, oh, this would be a great sweater to use a bunch of like odds and ends up. That would be a fun way to do those little dots that are up on the yoke. But as I thought about the practicality of that, and like doing a duplicate stitch and then having a couple ends to weave in, and then another duplicate stitch and 2 ends, and more duplicate stitch. So I very quickly realized, like, that does not sound like something I want to do. Not because I'm against weaving in ends. Like, I really will do whatever I need to do to make the project look good. But it's the fact that when you weave in that many ends, and the color that you're weaving in is a very different color than the color that you're weaving it into. So like, for instance, if I have a red dot right here and my surrounding yarn is all light beige and white, weaving that red yarn in and out is gonna show. Like, it's gonna be really hard to just have like 1 stitch of red and then not have it show all over the place. So I realized a good way to do this might be to get a very highly variegated skein, and that way I could just start somewhere, do a dot, have a little float, do another dot, have a float, do a dot. And so that way I really only have to weave in those ends in one spot. If I start and I finish in the same spot, that's it. So that sounded like a better idea. Just to me, that was my personal preference. If you want to use it as a scrap project, you can do it that way. Just good luck with those ends. So I've actually gone and come back. If I look a little bit different, that's why. I had a little lunch date with a friend today, and then we ended up taking a walk around some walking trails in town after lunch. So if I look like I've been blown apart, that's why. And also, I can't put that sweater back on. It's way too hot for that. I would take my pants off if I could get away with that. I'm warm. Anyway, welcome to the TMI podcast. So here's the last thing I was going to tell you about today. So I had my yearly vision check, and I thought, I mean, this is something that like I've dealt with for probably 10 years or so. And I hear that a lot of women deal with this. So I thought I would pass this on. So, what, like, I've said on the podcast before, I have Crohn's disease and it's well controlled and I'm healthy and good. So like, I don't have a lot of, problems from it right now. But one of the main thing that bothers me honestly is that I have really dry eyes. And when I say really dry eyes, like it's beyond like what most people would think of as dry eyes. Like it's, if I didn't treat them every day, a couple times a day, with like prescription medication, like they would be like, I would have a hard time opening them in the morning. So it's bad. So for the past, I would say probably 8 years, I've been using a prescription drop called Restasis that if you're familiar at all with dry eyes, maybe you've heard of this. It's an antihistamine. And it's okay. Like it definitely, my eyes are better when I use it than when I don't, but it's just okay. Like it's never made my eyes feel great or normal or anything approaching normal. And it also got to the point where I was adding a second drop, which was called, I want to say my doctors call it analogous tears, something like that. But you actually have to go to the hospital to get a blood draw, and then they send your blood to a compounding pharmacy that will like spin it, and they spin the IgG factor out of it, and then you like put that in your eye. And it's I guess it's like supposed to calm down inflammation. So again, like it helps, or maybe it's just having the liquid that helps. I don't know. Like I also use just like cysteine balance drops all the time. So that helps. But I've never gotten, in those 8 or 10 years that I've had this problem, I've never felt like I had normal eyes. Like very rarely. Maybe there's been a day or two every couple years where I've been like, okay, my eyes feel okay right now. So it's been like an ongoing issue. And it gets to the point where sometimes like it's, middle of the day and I just want to sit there with my eyes closed because it just hurts to have them open. It kind of feels like that feeling you get when you have sand in your eyes or an eyelash in your eyes. Like think of having that feeling like a lot of the time. Like it's actually, sometimes it's hard for me to realize if I have something in my eye because like the feeling doesn't change that much when I actually have an eyelash in my eye. So they don't feel great. But it's kind of amazing what you can adjust to if you have to. So anyway, my story here is that about a year ago, I went to the eye doctor and we were talking about the dry eyes situation. And I was saying, the tears help, the Restasis helps, but it's not great. So she gives me a sample of something called Xiidra, and she gives it to me and says like, well, you should try these drops. They're kind of new. And I gave them to my sister-in-law, but they made her really nauseous and like she actually got sick. And so I'm like, okay, thanks, I'll try them. And so I bring them home and like, I'm thinking like, okay, do I want to throw up tonight? Is that a good night to get sick? No, okay, I don't really feel like that. Okay, well, I'll get up the next morning. Do I want to be nauseous now? No, not really. So every day for like 2 months, I'm like, is today the day that I want to be nauseous? Nope, still not. Okay, well, I won't try those drops today. So I'm paranoid that like, her sister-in-law had that reaction. So I guess I've decided I'm going to have that reaction too. So I don't try them for a really long time. And then my next eye appointment comes around and I am going to a different doctor this time. And so I thought, well, I have those drops. I should try them. So like it just happened that I had, I guess, a not busy day. So I thought, well, if I get nauseous today, oh, well, I'll deal with it. So I tried the drops and they didn't make me nauseous. The eye doctor had warned me, like, they give you a horrible taste in your mouth and it makes you nauseous. Like, it gave me a weird taste in my mouth. It was not the most horrible taste. Like, eating Brussels sprouts, that's a worse taste than these eye drops. So it wasn't terrible. So I tried them and it didn't do anything bad. And I was like, okay, my eyes feel okay. And then I used them again that night. I woke up the next morning and I was like, my eyes still feel okay. So I'll try. There was 5 little vials in the sample. So for 2.5 days, I used these drops and I was like, I think these are better. So I stopped using the Restasis and I went to my appointment and I said, I've been trying these Xiidra drops and I feel like they're better than the Restasis. And the eye doctor's like, oh yeah, I've been having a lot of success with my patients who have not had that much success on Restasis. Some of them respond really well to these. And I'm like, why didn't, like, all of my doctors know that this is my worst symptom. And I'm like, why didn't somebody tell me? Like, these drops have been on the market for about a year and a half, since August of 2016. So, like, I probably had 10 doctor's appointments in that time period, and only one person gave me the drops, and she gave them to me with this disclaimer of like, you might get really sick on them. So that was kind of frustrating. But at the same time, if you are a person who, like me, has been using Restasis or some other thing, and the reason I guess that they work for some people is that histamine, like if you're a person that has histamine reactions, like if you take Claritin or Zyrtec or Singulair, any of those allergy medications, you may understand that there are different kinds of histamine receptors, I think, or maybe it's that you produce different kinds of histamine. But anyway, if you react well, or if you respond well to Claritin, then you may not respond as well to Zyrtec or Singulair, because those all address a different type of histamine. So I guess these eye drops are the same way. The Restasis addresses this histamine, but maybe you're not producing that kind. Maybe you're producing this kind, and that's the kind that Xiidra addresses. So apparently, I'm not a Restasis histamine person. I might be a Xiidra, whatever that's addressing. So I am really excited, because honestly, this is the best that my eyes have felt in probably 10 years. So it's really nice to like not feel like I have sand or eyelashes or anything terrible in my eyes. So since the doctors aren't apparently up on the bandwagon, I just want to pass that on. If you're a person who has struggled with dry eyes, and if you are, you know what I mean. Just, talk to your doctors about that eye drop, because you might really respond well, and it might really be a godsend for you. I started a new book. I think the last podcast I was talking about, I had just finished a book called Braving the Wilderness. Excellent book by Brene Brown. And I decided to go right into another one of her books that's called Daring Greatly. When I was recommended this author about a year ago. And the person that recommended her to me said, you should read this book called Daring Greatly. And then as I looked at her and saw what her work was and kind of looked at the different books she had, I thought that a different book called Gifts of Imperfection was kind of more like what I was looking to learn at that time. So I started with that book. And then she came out with this Braving the Wilderness book, and I thought, oh, that seems like an interesting topic. And then, so it's taken me a while to get around to Daring Greatly, but I'm really enjoying it so far. I'm only like 10% of the way into it. I don't have too much to say about it yet, because I'm just not that far into it. But I enjoy her writing a lot. She's just very straightforward, very conversational, and the stuff that she writes about just makes sense. So far, I'm really enjoying it. I'm sure I'll have more to say once I get farther through it. While I've been doing my knitting this week, let's see. I haven't been watching much on television. My husband and I just got finished watching The West Wing, which is a TV series from like the late 90s, early 2000s. I want to say it's 6 seasons, but that was, so I'm gonna say a couple political things here, so fasten up your seatbelts. Try not to get too bent out of shape about it. It's okay if people have different opinions. So here's my opinion. So we're not thrilled about the current state of politics, to say the very least. And one of the ways that we cope with that, and we actually have done this one other time in the past when we weren't thrilled about how things were going, one of the ways that we cope with that is that sometimes we escape into a world where people in politics have integrity and are trying to do the best they can for the people that they represent. Certainly the West Wing does talk about the backroom deals and the wheeling and dealing. Like, that's in there. But the underlying characters that are in that program, they are well-meaning people that are really trying to do the right thing. And that's something that reality, we feel like it's kind of lacking right now. So And if you are, because I know that there's a perception with The West Wing that there are people who feel like that's a show that, maybe you just like that because the people in that administration are Democrats. And P.S. like, I don't have an affiliation. I'm not married to one side or the other. In fact, I'm really not married to either one. But there's a perception that show unfairly, or that show favors Democrats and maybe demonizes or does not portray Republicans as well as, or as nobly as they portray the Democrats. If you're a person that believes that, I would challenge you to watch the last season. The last season of that show takes a very different turn. It's done more like a lot of the episodes almost feel like documentary style, whereas like most of the seasons are just very much like big budget TV, pretty drama kind of thing. But the last season is about the next election cycle. So after, Martin Sheen has been president for 2 terms now, so it's like year 7 of his presidency, and now there's a new Democrat that's running against a Republican. And the Republican candidate is portrayed by Alan Alda, and he is portrayed as at least as noble as the Democratic candidate. So it's really not about, one side being good and one side being bad or evil or wrong or anything like that. They really do a very good job of portraying it as 2 very well-meaning, smart, I like that. I like that in a leader. Smart people who they have different priorities, which is okay, but they are both really trying to do those things because they think it will best serve the people of their country. So it's just this ideal world that we miss. So we actually just finished that. And so we finished it and we're like, now it's over. And then I was like, you know what? If we watch it 3 more times, then maybe things will be better. It took us a year. It took us a year to watch all 6 seasons. If we do that 3 more times, it'll be 3 years in the future, and maybe we won't have to watch it anymore to hide from reality. So that's what we've been watching on television. I don't think we have, I'm not sure what else is coming. Oh, I saw a preview. I think it was on Instagram. Last night I was in bed scrolling through Instagram, and I saw this ad, and I forgot what something about Rise. But it has, do you remember the show How I Met Your Mother with Ted Mosby? I forgot, Joshua Radnor, is that his name? Josh Radnor. He is on a new show that looks like, maybe it's like Fame meets Glee meets Smash. It's like those 3 shows, if like you crumpled them up and smashed them together, this new show. Oh, and Mr. Holland's Opus, maybe, because, he's a teacher. So I'm very excited to see what that show's about, because music teachers, that's the world I've come from. And it's like performing, it seems like maybe it's high school. I guess it could be college, but it looked more like high school in the ad. So I saw that. I'm excited to see what that one is. And I think it had like a March debut date. So I'll be looking for that one. I want to say it was an NBC show. So if you know what that one is, check it out. All right. Obviously, I'm just going on and on about non-knitting stuff. So I guess that's all the stories I have for today. So now I'm really done. I hope you have a great couple weeks, and I will see you later. Bye.